Okay, so now we are going to make the stamp that we're going to use to decorate our sketchbook cover. I have an example here of a stamp that I made using the sticky foam shapes and arranging them onto that square. Let me show you how I did that. The shapes that you have are pretty standard shapes, like triangles, hearts, stars, rectangles, things like that. But you can turn these into whatever shapes you want just with regular scissors by like maybe cutting it in half. This heart then becomes like 2 teardrop shapes. You can make smaller triangles. You could cut curves and come up with whatever shapes that you decide to use for your design. Is great. Once you have your shapes decided on, then you can start arranging them, creating a composition on your square. Really up to you how you decide to do it. You could fill the whole thing if you want to, but you don't have to. You could maybe decide that you want it to be more of a line going across, like something along these lines. Or you could work from the corner and have it sort of coming from the corner so that when you go to print it, you could rotate that stamp to make it like a really interesting design when you go to print. It's up to you. So once you have decided what your stamp is going to look like, where you're going to put those shapes, peel the paper off the back and then just stick them down to your chipboard square. Just arrange them however you want. I'm kind of just putting them into place as I go. You could always sketch out a few different ones. You could combine the shapes to make a picture. Like when I turn this a certain way, it kind of starts to look like a mouse or something. So maybe you want to do that, like combine the shapes to create something recognizable. Totally up to you. It's your design. I think I'm going to put one more stamp on here, or one more foam shape on here. And I've created just sort of an abstract arrangement of shapes. I'm gonna push these other ones aside. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna add one more thing. I'm gonna cut this little heart in half. And don't worry about the colors of the sticky foam shapes. When we go to print these, they're all gonna be the color of the ink. So it really doesn't matter what color the shapes are when you're creating your stamp. Before I start stamping on my cover, I'm gonna do a practice stamp on just a piece of blue paper I happen to have. You could use just like copy paper, whatever paper you have around that you can just like kind of scrap when you're done with it. Or I was thinking I could put a stamp on this like up in the corner, and then I could use this as stationery and like write a letter to a friend, and it'll just make it sort of a personalized, customized piece of stationery. So let me show you how to actually do the printing. Here's my stamp. I have some paper. In your kit, you should have a smooth paper that's white that you can use to roll the ink on. I've got some paper here for that. You have your ink and your popsicle stick. I'm gonna just use my popsicle stick to put some ink onto my inking paper. I'm setting up a little printmaking station for myself. So I just put a little bit of ink on that paper. I have my roller, my brayer, that I am using to roll the ink. And I'm gonna start here and just kind of roll the ink onto that roller. Just kind of like a rolling pin, actually. You want to just make sure that the ink gets all the way around the roller. Once you've done that, you can start rolling ink onto your stamp. Make sure you get it on all the shapes. Make them nice and inky. Once that's done, whatever it is that you're stamping on, right now, like I said, I'm gonna practice by just creating this little piece of stationery. I'm gonna decide where to put my stamp. I think for this, I'm gonna put a stamp here and here. So I'm gonna just carefully put it down where I want it, and I'm just gonna press all around to make sure that I'm pressing on all of those foam shapes so that the ink will transfer to that blue paper. I think it should be good. This ink that we're using is a block printing ink, so it's designed especially for this kind of printmaking. I should still have enough ink to do the opposite corner. I thought that would be kind of cool to have like opposite corners printed, and then I can write my letter in the other spaces. Just pressing, try not to wiggle that stamp, you don't want it to smear, and then lifting, okay? And then I have this special printed piece of paper that I can use later. Now when you go to do your book, and I'm going to switch over, I had made a stamp a little bit earlier. You can see how I have a different composition. It's really up to you how you decide to use these stamps. I'm going to use this stamp to demonstrate printing on the cover of my book. So same thing, I'm going to go back to my roller, roll it into the ink. If you run out of ink, you can get some from your container and put a little bit more on there and roll it on. I'm rolling it onto the stamp, making sure I get all of the shapes inky. Sometimes you need to add a little bit more ink from your little ink smear, rolling it on. And now this time when I go to stamp, I'm going to do a pattern where I'm going to rotate my stamp. You don't have to do it, it's just something a little extra. So I'm going to start with this square up in the corner, pressing, making sure I put pressure on all of those foam shapes. I can feel it under my fingers. And then lifting, and then I can add more ink, roll it on there. Just get that nice and inked up. And then this time, my square started here, so I'm going to just rotate it and print. Okay. And then ink it, and I'm just going to repeat inking, rotating, stamping until my cover is covered. Once you have put enough stamps on it, and you don't have to cover the whole thing, it's kind of up to you how you decide to do your design. And then I would just keep continuing down. Once you're happy with your printing, go ahead and set that book cover aside to dry. The ink that we're using, that block printing ink, is a water-soluble ink, so it just cleans up with soap and water. You could just get a wet paper towel and wipe off your stamp if you feel like it's too inky, or you could just let it dry. You can wash your hands with soap and water, wipe your table, whatever that ink got on should clean up really easily with soap and water, or even just like a baby wipe. Sometimes I use those. And then next video on Thursday, we're going to talk about how to turn your stamped cover and the pages. We're going to talk about how to sew it together using that needle and thread to create your sketchbook. Okay? All right. Have fun printing. Please reach out if you have any questions, or if you run out of ink, I can bring you some more ink. If you need any materials, just let us know and we will hook you up. All right, see you soon. Bye.